Turkey and
Mm.
Qatar share a strong alliance with both countries supporting Islamist factions like Hamas.
Both countries have competing interests in places like Syria and Iraq, right? So, but they also cooperate economically. So, I think this rivalry kind of influences Turkey's stance. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to today's podcast. Today, we are diving deep into the pressing issue in international security, the evolving dynamics of Iran Israel conflict. And to help us navigate this complex landscape, we have distinguished guest Dr. Osgar Kayal. Osgar is a data scientist specializing in intersections of data science and international relations. With a PhD in security studies from University of Central Florida and masters in maritime security from University in Turkey, his academic credentials and experiences are complementary to real-world experiences with NATO and Turkish Navy. Dr. Osgar's research focus on critical themes like international cooperation, regionalism, and global environmental politics, all of which are pivotal in understanding the current tensions in the region. As we explore the implications of the Turkey Israel relationship within this conflict, Dr. Osgar's insight into the quantitative methodologies and international dynamics will shed light on the broader security landscape. So let's welcome Dr. Asghar Kayal to discuss the role of Turkey in the current Iran-Israel conflict and its ramification on international security issues. Hi Asghar, how are you doing?
Hello, Kinari. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for having me in your podcast series. I'm happy to share my ideas and contribute your efforts here.
Yes, we are very excited to have you on board as well, Oscar, because I'm sure your expertise and knowledge on international security issues, and especially you belong to the region now, which is completely unstable with a lot of crisis, humanitarian crisis, refugee crisis, implications on arms race, terrorism, and so many things going on, right? So we are very excited, and we know that you will contribute and give out really good insights that will help people understand, address the issue, and also know what could be the potential challenges that we see in the future. So we really thank you for joining us today and welcome to today's episode.
You're welcome.
So, Oscar, with starting with this Iran-Israel conflict on the whole, today we are more excited to deep dive into the role of Turkey and understand what its stance is in the current conflicting or crisis areas. Because I think it's one of the very crucial players in this conflict. Because as we understand, it has. And it has been supporting Palestinian rights and has a complex relationship with Israel as well. And we have seen kind of ups and downs, especially after the incidents like Gaza flotilla raid in 2010, right? So while Turkey maintains economic ties with Israel, it also strongly backs Iran or the Palestinian, viewing it as a very legitimate resistance movement. So what do you think about this? What layer of complexity do you think this kind of adds in today's discussion?
As you said, the situation is very complex, especially in terms of Turkey's stance in this conflict. But I would say that it's also rooted in both historical alliances and geopolitical realities. On one hand, Turkey has been a keen supporter of a Palestinian cause, consistently criticizing Israeli actions in Gaza and the West Bank. But President Erdogan's government, AKP, regularly condemns Israeli airstrikes and occupation policies, portraying Turkey as a defender of Muslim rights. However, Turkey is also mindful of not completely alienating Israel due to economic and security ties, especially in sectors like energy, defense, and trade. Let me share some numbers with you.
Sure.
According to Turkish Statistical Institute, Israeli was Turkey's 13th biggest export partner in 2023. And last year, the total value of trade between Israel and Turkey stood at $6.8 billion.
Mm.
with Turkish exports accounting for 76% of this sum. So Turkey and Israel is really very good economic partner each other. And besides economy, historically Turkey and Israel had strong military intelligence cooperation.
Mm.
Though this relationship have soared in recent years. As you mentioned, diplomatic ties were severed after 2010 Gaza flotilla incidents. But attempts at reconciliation have been ongoing. Turkish foreign policy reflects a little bit a careful balancing act.
Mm.
While ideologically aligned with Iran in opposition to Israeli policies, Turkey remains a NATO member and aligns strategically with Western powers. Its broader goals include positioning itself as a key mediator in regional disputes, often stepping into the diplomatic void left by more entrenched actors. There is also domestic parts of this issue, actually, domestic politics part. One of the big shifts we have seen in Turkey under Erdogan is how central the Palestinian issue has become Turkey's push for regional leadership. Erdogan has used this for many times, combined with a sense of neo-Ottomanism, to really sell the idea to Turkish voters that Turkey has a special, historically, responsibility to protect the region's Muslim populations, especially vulnerable Palestinians. Um, his whole political message revolves around this idea of rising Turkey and one that's reclaiming its rightful place in the region. Um, in all of this, President Erdogan foreign policy speeches, in all of Erdogan's speeches, you can hear this theme of Turkish exceptionalism, and it's at the heart of his center of Turkey vision.
Mm.
Domestically, this works well with the voters, with his voters, AKP voters. He presents himself as the only leader standing up to Israel and the West. And it's a big part of how he wants to be remembered as a leader who brought about the rebirth of Turkish influence while never forgetting the Palestinians and Jerusalem.
I also feel that its relationship with Iran kind of adds another layer of complexity. Why is because both countries have competing interests in places like Syria and Iraq, right? So, but they also cooperate economically. So, I think this rivalry kind of influences Turkey's stance on this issue because it also maybe seeks to counter Iranian influence in the region while maintaining its diplomatic relations. Like, what do you think about it?
Um, Relationships, Turkish relationships with Israeli, Palestine,
Hmm.
Iran, Egypt, and Qatar create an intricate web of interests, that influence its involvement in the conflict. Um, let's say Iran. Talk about the Iran. Turkey and Iran are regional rivals, competing for influence in Syria. We witnessed that in Iraq, even in South Caucasus, around Azerbaijan and Armenia, and the broader region. While both oppose Israeli military actions, their cooperation is often pragmatic rather than ideological.
Mm.
For instance, Turkey opposes Iranian-backed militias in Syria while working with Tehran on issues like Kurdish separatism.
Mm.
For instance, Turkey opposes Iranian-backed militias in Syria while working with Tehran on issues like Kurdish separatism, PKK fighters, and other Kurdish separatist terrorist groups. Both countries maintain a delicate balance between cooperation and rivalry, with the Israeli-Iran conflict sometimes serving as a backdrop to broader power
Hmm.
struggles. I would say Egypt and the Qatar are the another stakeholders of this conflict in the region, and the determination of the Turkey's foreign policy. For example, Turkey's relationship with Egypt, especially under President Sisi, is strained. The two countries have clashed over Libya, political Islam, and the Eastern Mediterranean gas dispute. Egypt's closer ties to Israel and its role in mediating ceasefires between Hamas and Israel complicate Turkey's regional ambitions. While both nations seek stability, their visions for the region diverge, limiting cooperation in the addressing conflict. Um,
Yeah.
mention about the Qatar as well. Turkey and
Hmm.
Qatar share a strong alliance, with both countries supporting Islamist factions like Hamas and opposing Saudi Emirati influence in the region. Qatar's significant financial support for Gaza aligns with Turkey's humanitarian agenda, and both states often coordinate their regional diplomacy.
So, do you think that its support for Hamas is going to affect its relationship with Israel?
Uh, Apparently, it will not contribute to the peace or any ceasefire negotiation
Yeah.
between the stakeholders. But as I said, there's the dimension of the domestic parts and the relationship with Qatar.
Hmm.
And sometimes we hear that Qatar helped Turkish economical crisis, and Turkey follow policies in the region as with the favor of the Qatar. Um, so at the point we know that Qatar support Hamas,
Hmm.
uh, and apparently Turkey will continue to support the Hamas.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about the role of regional organizations like Arab League or Organization of Islamic Cooperation, or what we call as OIC, because what we have seen over the years is that these organizations have faced severe challenges in effectiveness, right? In effectively addressing the Middle Eastern issues and especially the Israel-Iran conflict. While it kind of aims to present a very unified approach on issues like Palestinian, member states often have differing interests. So, for instance, if we know, like, while the League has put forward the Arab League Initiative Accords back in 2002, where the normalization with Israel was contingent on withdrawing from various occupied territories. Right, so the many countries have since pursued their own normalization deals with Israel, diluting this league's accord or collective power. So I think this kind of lacks unity and making it difficult to create more strong and cohesive response to the conflict. This is what I feel and I think about the region organizations in Middle East. I would like to know what you think about it as well.
Um, Regional organizations, international organizations, are really critical actors, especially in the conflict management. They are always my interest. In my
Hmm.
doctoral thesis, I also delve into these organizations. But it is hard to say that regional organizations in this region, like Arab League,
Hmm.
the
YC.
Organization of Islamic Cooperation (OIC), is very effective to solve some issues, solve conflicts in this region. The Arab League, historically the premier body representing Arab states, has long been vocal about the Israeli and Palestinian conflict. However, internal divisions within the Arab League have weakened its capacity to respond effectively. Many member states, particularly those aligned with the Abraham Accords like
Mhm.
United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, have normalized relationships with Israel, prioritizing economic and security interest over ideological solidarity with Palestine.
Mm.
For example, Egypt, a key Arab League member, right, plays a mediating role, but at the same time avoids direct involvement in anti-Israel rhetoric.
Mm.
This shift in priorities has reduced Arab League's relevance in Israeli-Iran conflict,
Mm.
as member states focus on national interests rather than collective Arab interests.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk about the OIC position. It is difficult to say it's different. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation (OIC), representing, as far as I know, 57 or 55 Muslim majority countries, um, they regularly condemns Israeli actions and supports Palestinian rights.
Mm.
However, like the Arab League, the OIC suffers from a lack of cohesion.
Mm.
While it provides a platform for Muslim solidarity,
Mm.
its statements often lacked practical follow up due to the conflicting agendas of member states.
Mm.
The OIC's role in this conflict is more symbolic than actionable,
Mm.
as many of its member states, such as Saudi Arabia and Turkey, pursue divergent strategies in the region.
But
Still, OIC,
But then why is it more symbolic than actionable? Don't you think then they should get more involved in this, or maybe form a committee for crisis response or something that mobilize quickly during conflicts, right? Because then it can also ensure rapidly addressing the conflict and also unit.
um, I would say both Arab League and OIC have limited influence over the conflict's resolution.
Mm.
While their statements and diplomatic meetings bring attention to the issues,
Mm.
the lack of enforcement mechanisms makes them ineffective in shifting the region's balance of power.
Mm.
Instead, these organizations serve as a forums for dialogue, allowing regional powers to maintain diplomatic channels without committing to decisive actions. Their influence on stability is indirect. They generally offer platforms for negotiation and occasionally mediate ceasefires. But their internal divisions prevent them from being central actors in conflict resolutions.
Yeah.
We can see this in the more institutional organizations like EU, like NATO. Um, there's really how do we say cooperation efforts in these regions, and national interests are not that important when the issues are really important.
Yeah. So overall the conclusion is that because of their internal divisions, they are not able to effectively address today's conflict.
Yes, I would say that internal conflicts together with national interests, these internal conflicts stem from the
Yeah.
national different divergent national interests of the member states.
Yeah, yeah, completely agreed. And let's get to the last chapter that we are very keen to discuss is the impact of the conflict on the regional stability and also on the global stability. Because on the regional stability side, we can see that there could be various refugee and humanitarian crises, right? Because the ongoing violence has created a severe humanitarian situation, like with millions of people being displaced. And I think this influx of refugees, especially into neighboring countries like Jordan and Lebanon, have put tremendous pressure on the resources and can lead to also social tensions or various kind of political economic problems. Because, for instance, in Lebanon, if you see, the presence of Palestinian refugees have historically been linked to civil unrest, and current conditions only amplify these risks, right? Or in Jordan, for example, the demographic balance is delicate, complicating the monarchy and stability. So, generally, what do you think this conflict, other than from refugee and humanitarian crisis, can have different kinds of implications?
Um, the Middle East is already a region struggling with one of the world's largest refugee populations,
Mm.
right? The ongoing conflict exacerbates this humanitarian crisis as well. In Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan, millions of refugees continue to live in camps or urban areas with limited access to services.
Mm.
I know Turkey. Turkey hosts over 4 million refugees, primarily from Syria and Afghanistan, and ongoing instability in the region threatens to create new waves of displacement. If you noticed the news, I heard that 1 million Lebanese who lived in the south of the Lebanon
Yes.
now are refugee
Mm.
and they unsettled and they are moving to the northern part of the country.
Yeah.
Um, so this conflict, particularly as it affects Gaza and Lebanon, puts additional pressure on countries, regional countries like Jordan, Egypt, and Turkey,
Mm.
which already face challenges managing the refugee populations.
Yeah.
And instability caused by the conflicts discourages international investments in the region as well. And this lead to the protracted humanitarian crisis as infrastructure deteriorates and refugees become further marginalized. There are lots of domestic conflict. I mean, domestic chaos is happening in Turkey because of refugees.
Yeah. Yeah, true. I think this refugee will increase humanitarian and other socio-economic political challenges in the neighboring countries also. And with that said, I also feel that arms race in the Middle East is also one of the greater implications of this conflict, because as we see that when Israel is investing heavily in the advanced military technologies like Iron Dome and stuff like that, it might also facilitate other states to increase their own military capabilities, because they could see being threatened by Israel or maybe by Iran, and this perceived threat have begun to increase their own military spending as well significantly, right? So I think this will also kind of creates a security dilemma in the Middle Eastern region because of the perceived threat from Iran and Israel and their continuous development of advanced military technologies.
Yes, exactly. This region, Middle East countries, consistently increase their military spending, and this Israeli and Palestinian conflict, you know, bother some other countries as well, like Jordan, Egypt, and Turkey, for example, increase their defense expenditures, and they turn to the increased national defense infrastructure.
Yeah.
And there's a trend that Turkish government support and sometimes finance some of the defense companies, private companies,
Mm.
to to support Turkish army, navy, and the air force.
Yeah, yeah. If you see that they are just not increasing their own military technologies or advancing them, but I think their foreign policies are becoming much more aggressive, like kind of doing military interventions. So I think it's making countries more and more aggressive towards each other.
Another issue about the implication of this conflict about the humanitarian aid and intervention. And Turkey, alongside with Qatar and other regional actors, has positioned itself as a key provider of humanitarian aid in Gaza and other conflict zones.
Mm,
Turkey's diplomatic efforts often center around ceasefires and aid deliveries, allowing it to protect soft power in a region
mm.
where hard power dynamics dominates. However, the region's complex political landscape, coupled with frequent military escalations, makes this delivering aid very difficult. I know some organizations like United Nations, UNRWA, struggle to provide adequate support due to funding shortages and political interference. I know which I partly involved operation in Lebanon in 2006, UNIFIL operations. An Israeli attack one of the units of the UNIFIL outpost. So this kind of things, the humanitarian crisis is not just a matter of immediate relief, but also long-term stability.
Yes.
Without resolution to the underlying conflicts, particularly this dispute, the refugee situation will only worsen.
Yes, that's true. And I think it's high time now that the states engage in conflict resolution mechanisms, because as we have identified what are the implications of the conflict, and I feel that it might get more worse and worse, and it's high time that the steps to de-escalate aggressive postures, aggressive policies, to address the humanitarian concerns, refugee crisis. It's very important to have multilateral talks, right? That includes not just state but also non-state groups and actors, which can create more like a comprehensive response while addressing the conflict.
Yes, I agree. This conflict, the Israeli-Iran conflict, reflects broader Middle Eastern rivalries, particularly between sectarian issues, Sunni and Shia powers. Saudi Arabia and Iran's competition for regional dominance plays out in various theaters, including Yemen, Syria, and Iraq.
Yeah.
Any escalation between Israel and Iran could lead to the proxy wars involving Hezbollah, Hamas, and other groups. This will destabilizing more the region.
Yeah, and
Uh,
I think the other regional stakeholders or international key actors like EU, US, UN, they should also focus on um, addressing this regional security problems, and go to the root causes of refugee crisis, promoting economic development, having more kind of bilateral and multilateral agreements, because this might also reduce the burden of refugees from one region to the rest of the world, by also improving the local governance in both the host country and the origin country, right? So I think it's very important.
exactly. If you remember, after Syrian civil war,
Mm.
there was a flow of migrants, and major of them, wanted to go to the European countries.
Yeah.
And these refugees create another sociological problems in these countries. And later we witnessed that far-right parties in the European political arena increased. It happened in Germany, it happened in Austria, it happened in France.
Mm.
Now, This refugee issues is not, we cannot say, just a regional one. It has broader conflict in the even in the Europe, even in the United States as well.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think this just does not affect the regional security and stability of the Middle East, but it impacts the rest of the world. Because in the last podcast, we delve into the ideas of extremism, we delve into the ideas of energy security, trade, because this conflict is just not affecting the Middle Eastern stability and security, but has wider implications. And it's high time that it needs to be addressed properly.
Moreover, the conflict impacts global energy markets,
Hmm.
particularly if Iran's oil exports are affected by sanctions and military actions. And Turkey, as a key transit hub for energy pipelines, is deeply affected by these dynamics, both economically and politically. Turkey, positioned as strategic transit hub for pipelines such as Baku, Tiflis, Ceyhan, BTC, and Trans-Anatolian natural gas pipeline, plays a critical role in transporting oil and gas from Caspian region and beyond the European markets. So disruption in energy flows from neighboring regions, especially Iran, would not affect Turkey's energy security, but also its affect economic and geopolitical standing. I would say beyond the humanitarian crisis.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That's true, because I remember in last podcast we also discussed that Strait of Hormuz that might disrupt the supply chain and the trading activities that could affect the trade with the Asia Pacific region, right? And there the oil prices and everything might also increase. So coming back to the same point, it's very important to understand that it just does not have implications on Middle Eastern stability and security, but the rest of the world.
Yes.
Yes, and thank you so much, Dr. Oscar Gayal. We really got so many good and effective insights from you. I think in today's conversation, we were able to address some of the key security and stability high points that are at the very heart of the international security issues. And I really appreciate that you pressing more concern on the refugee and humanitarian crisis that has caused and is being causing because of this conflict, because it's very important that to address and think about these issues, which I'm very glad that you pressed on and gave your very insightful and nuanced insights to us. We really do appreciate, and once again thank you so much for joining us today, and we can't wait to have our next episode with you.
You're welcome, Kinnari. Thanks for having me in this podcast. So I'm happy to share my ideas, and good luck with the other podcasts.
Yes, thank you so much, Oscar. Bye, take care.